One of the tutorials I was looking forward to trying was dyeing 3D printed parts. Now, as far as I know, this is only a technique that works on sintered parts, so SLS parts that are made out of nylon, and that's because what they have is they have quite a porous surface. In order to do it, what you need to do is have a stove, a pan, and this is an old pan that we've used in the past, which is why it's really dirty, mucky, covered in dye already, and some RIT dye for fabric. And what we're going to do is we're going to dissolve the dye into the water, get a nice slow rolling boil, and then we're going to add our parts to it, let them sit for about 30 minutes and see what results we can get from it. I've preheated the water in a kettle already so that it shouldn't take as long to boil, and from the RIT packet I'm probably going to add about half of this. I don't know how much to add, I'm just giving it a try. If the colour's a bit faint I can always add some more. Let's add about half of that, maybe a little touch more, is about half. And we'll wait for that to come to a boil. Decided to stir with a cocktail stick because it's disposable. The parts I'm going to dye today are the brackets from the filming rig, and then a number of components from the minty pie. So now we've got a start of a boil going, let's add our parts. And the two smaller components. One of the things you will be able to see is that the dye is actually seeping up the parts already, even though they're not quite underwater. So I'm going to turn down my heat a little bit, make sure all the parts are fully submerged. And my understanding is they've gone black quite quickly, but actually it's going to be a bit of time, so the longer I dye them for, the longer they're submerged for, the deeper the colour will be. So now they're all submerged, I'm just going to leave them. As I say, what I'll probably try is 10 minutes at first, come back and have a look, and then maybe 20, then maybe 30, see if I can figure out a good amount of time to do this for. One of the things to watch with this is you'll notice I've turned off the stove. This can bubble up quite dramatically, so if it does take off the heat, you'll notice we've still got a nice rolling amount of heat. It's been 10 minutes now that the parts have been in, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly fish out one of these parts, and I'm going to give it a quick rinse and have a look how much it's dyed. Now what I will say is I'm amazed how quickly that worked. I'm not quite sure how deep the penetration is, but at the moment, after 10 minutes, that's a lovely deep black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish out all the rest of the components, going to give them a rinse to rinse off any excess dye, I'm going to dry them off, and then we'll start having a look at them. Having got the parts out the dye and given them a rinse off in cold water, what I was really surprised about was how quick this process went. I only used half the dye within the pack. There was a little bit of tissue paper on it there, but only using half the dye in the pack, and 10 minutes and the parts are black. Now, as with most SLS parts, they still have that slightly powdery finish, but it's a really good way to colour some of your components. What I'd be interested in doing in the future is actually trying the same technique but with a lighter colour. I know that black is an incredibly dark colour and it covered these incredibly quickly and well. The other thing I was very pleasantly surprised about with this process was actually that there isn't really any warping. So although the parts are heated up in quite hot water, and it will struggle to focus on these two slimmer parts, so a couple of parts from the minty pie, the screen surround and the whole jig, there wasn't any warping of the parts. So overall, it's definitely a process I'd use again in terms of finishing parts. The only thing left to do is to compare it to other finishes like these and the other parts of the minty pie I've actually sprayed. What I did with these is I deliberately didn't sand them, and I've just given them a light coat of grey. What that does is it gives you a slight texture, which is from the SLS, that feels a little bit like a spark eroded finish, but holding the parts up against each other, it's an incredibly comparable finish, considering one was simply dyed in 10 minutes and one had to be primed and painted. You see it's got a little bit of paint on the back, but I look forward to putting this together. It's a really nice way of actually finishing components with a uniform colour if you can't spray paint them, if you don't have the facilities to do that. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe and check back for more videos on different processes, different model making techniques, and I look forward to making a new video soon.